have to be twice as good as our white counterparts in order to be equal. That's setting us up to fail right from the start. Engaging with the legacies of slavery requires that we look back at history in order to recognize the continuing impacts of that history on communities today. Racism, inequity, inequality, economic and power dynamics, who and what is valued, who and what are not. And these are issues which impact every aspect of my life and all of our lives every day. Yet to a large extent, we remain oblivious or unquestioning. We accept the way that it is as being just the way it is. The Legacies of Slavery consultation has drawn a wide variety of responses from across our church. But I am reminded of something shared by Archbishop Justin Welby at a recent ecumenical event. He said, Christians in relating to each other often start with the question, what do you believe? He says that's the wrong question. We should start with, who do we follow? Because the first is immediately divisive. I believe this, you believe that, we've got to defend our corners. But the second question finds common ground. We follow Jesus. We are on the same side, so to speak. I want us to employ that in our thinking on this issue. I want to further ask, where does Jesus lead, if not to abundant life for all people, equally? When we look at our world, our society, our church, is that what we see? We frequently use the image of the church as Christ's body, in which if one part hurts, all parts hurt. Well, I'm not asking a question. I'm telling you categorically that there are parts of our body which are hurting and have been hurting for centuries. And if anyone wants to believe that the issues are only out there and not within the URC, I'm going to refer you back to the poem with which I started, which is based on testimonies shared with me by black ministers in our church, their church, during the past couple of years. How are we going to respond? The Legacies of Slavery Task Group is recommending that the United Reformed Church offers an apology to God and to our African and African diaspora peoples for transatlantic slavery, yes, but for the continuing legacies today and for our complicity in those legacies. We know the URC did not participate directly. The URC did not yet exist, but we were formed in a society which did benefit and continues to benefit from the proceeds of transatlantic slavery, from the profits of slavery. And some of our forebears did participate as slave owners, slave traders, and apologists for slavery. It wasn't us, but an apology by us would firmly draw a line between their actions then and our convictions today. Why would we not want to draw that line?
When I was asked in May 2021 to become convener of the Legacies of Slavery Task Group, my instinct was to say no. Wouldn't you feel the same way? And I jotted down a good many reasons why I was too busy, not qualified, and so on. But I kept hearing a still, small, uncomfortable voice. Eventually I said yes, and I've never regretted doing so. By profession, I'm a teacher and writer of history. I've traveled widely around the world, but I can't imagine living anywhere except this wonderful, wacky country. But I have become increasingly unhappy about the selective way we narrate our past and about the effect of this selectivity on how we view the present and imagine our future. One of those blind spots is about race and empire. All of us in Britain today, rich or poor, whatever the colour of our skin, are still living off the capital accrued by Britain's imperial past. Enslaved labour was part of that empire, part of the capital created. Today, we like to celebrate the abolitionists who helped bring slavery to an end in the early 19th century. We're slower to acknowledge the wealth generated by enslaved people before slavery was abolished. I brought some of those thoughts to our early discussions. But as time went on, I said less and listened more. Sometimes during our Zoom meetings, I was the only white person on the call. And I had the sobering privilege of being allowed to listen as black people, black British people of African and Caribbean heritage opened up about the ways they are abused in daily life. What's even more shocking, these include ministers of our own United Reformed Church. Listening to people like Karen, Zadie, and Stephen made me understand why we need to make a confession and apology. I realized they need to hear it because they are part of the body of Christ in which we share, and they are hurting. And I also realized I need to say it. During one of those meetings, we discussed how hard it is in daily life to say, I'm sorry. And also what happens when we do manage to utter those two tiny words. The effect is enormous on others and on us. Our church and our country have spoken words of regret for slavery, but regret is impersonal. Saying, I'm sorry, comes from the heart. It doesn't mean I take legal responsibility for what happened 200 years ago. It means that I am ashamed that our country behaved in that way and that those attitudes to other human beings still poison life today. In addition to the confession and apology, the task group is also urging that words are not enough. We have to do something to show that we are sorry. To do something about the legacies of enslavement that are still around today in the form of racism and deprivation. What exactly we should do by way of what we've called repairing justice is work in progress for the next year, as we consult with congregations and synods about possible projects around this country and with CWM partners, especially in the Caribbean, about their needs. In this way, we would be carrying on the work of our abolitionist forebears 2 centuries ago. But the first step is to say those painful, liberating words. I'm sorry.
Mission Committee asks General Assembly to wholeheartedly adopt Resolutions 20 and 21.
Thank you. So we have before us 2 resolutions, the first around the apology and the second around the action. So we will take those separately, although recognising that they are intertwined in some ways. So we first move into the information session around the apology. That's Resolution 20, which is on the screen. So if anybody has questions for information clarification. And again, reminding those online that you use your raise hand function to be called. Thank you.
Ian Hardy, convener of the Finance Committee. My question relates to the focus on Africa and the Caribbean as the apology. Although there is undoubtedly a lot to apologise in relation to the Caribbean and in relation to Africa, it's not exclusively Africa and the Caribbean that we need to apologise to. Our Congregationalist tradition has...
Sorry, Ian, we're in information
Yeah,
rather
sorry,
than...
right.
So what
so
information are you seeking?
The question is, why has the US, and to a lesser extent Latin America, been excluded from the confession when so many of our Congregationalist predecessors were engaged in slavery in those areas too?
Thank you.
Paul Ellis, Eastern Synod. Moderator, I seek clarification that what we're asked to adopt in Resolution 20 is only part 2 of the report and not the whole of the report.
Thank
you. Bridget Micklem, Wessex Synod. This is all fairly new to me. It's my first assembly and so on. But I gather from the report that there's been a process of consultation on the wording. Obviously that has happened. I hadn't seen any of it. But can I just ask what has been altered in the statement as a result of the consultation process? In other words, were there amendments to the text that came out as a result of the consultation process?
Sarah and team, do you want to respond to those?
Thank you. As to the first point about the United States, Latin America, I mean, we're speaking on behalf of the United Reformed Church. So absolutely true that slavery was a feature of the whole of the Americas. But I think we are concerned with the legacies of British enslavement, which particularly took place in the Caribbean. As to the question, I think, about, as I understand it, part 1 or part 2, part 1 is the general background. What we are asking for is support for the resolutions in part 2 that are before you today. Thanks very much.
With regards to what has changed, we have listened to the consultation responses. There were responses, for example, who suggested that confession needed to come before apology. So the draft was apology and confession. It is now confession and apology. We've also listened to those people who felt that there was a lack of recognition of our abolitionist forebears. So we've taken that into consideration and written that into the proposed resolution as well. We've also reduced the text considerably because people felt it was too wordy and maybe not all of it was so much relevant for us. So we reduced it in light of that.
Thank you. Are there any more questions for clarification or more information? I'm not seeing anyone, so I think we move into the discussion stage. So if you want to raise issues of discussion.
Laura Everard, General Assembly and Assembly Executive, URC Youth Rep. Only say that once, promise. We discussed this in What Do You Think? And I am in full favour of this motion because although we as a church obviously weren't around when slavery was abolished or when slavery was practiced in the UK, the church is not separate from society. We're not separate from the UK. And the UK is a country that has benefited and still to this day benefits from the legacies of slavery. And even worse, there are people in this country and people all around the world which still suffer as a result of the legacies of slavery. So therefore, I ask General Assembly to please vote for this motion.
Rebecca Smith, East Midlands Synod. I also highly support this resolution, and it was something that we discussed in quite a bit of detail, and I hope that everybody here and online will also be in full support for this, but obviously it is a big issue and there needs to be a lot of discussion as well. Some people may think it was 2 centuries ago, it didn't involve us. We weren't there, we weren't the ones that were using slaves and committing these acts. But what we do need to acknowledge is that it's gone on far too long. We've used these legacies for far too long without apologising and confessing what we've done. So we should also make sure that we're apologising for not acting sooner. And we should strive to keep working to make reparations with those affected most by these lasting legacies.
Okay, can we go to Fiona Bennett online, please?
Fiona, thank you very much, Moderator. Fiona Bennett, Synod Scotland, Moderator-elect. Our congregation, in response to this consultation, has been doing some research into the history and the legacy of slavery within Edinburgh, and we have been shocked to discover how it was through slavery has funded part of the banking that still shapes the city of Edinburgh and the culture today. It is through the payouts for the reparation towards slave owners for the end of slavery, which actually has funded some of the infrastructure that is of the railways that we use today. We have been deeply shocked to see how far the legacy stretches and still affects our society today. And so as a congregation, we are very much in support of the apology and of the resolutions as a whole. Thank you.
Jo Harris, Youth Assembly Moderator. So one of the first things I'd like to say is that when we look around at General Assembly, the faces that I see are majority of white faces. And as white people, we're speaking on a black issue. This issue affects black people in the UK on an unbelievable level. And as moderator of URC Youth, I know that the young people within URC Youth would be 100% backing this. So I would really love to urge you to vote for this motion and vote for this resolution, because it affects my black friends, it affects the black people in our congregation, and as white people, we should have apologised sooner.
I'm aware that there are a number of people waiting to speak, one of whom is black, and I think if you are willing to come and speak out of turn, then we will be very happy to hear from you.
Thank you. Anthony Obi, Palmer's Green, or Thames North Synod. Thank you. Let me thank Karen for her presentation. And it's a very difficult subject to talk about, but one that is long overdue. Jomo Kenyatta, I just want to talk about the role of Christianity in slavery. I think it was Pope, I can't remember his name, but in 1492, issued this decree called the Doctrine of Discovery, which was the forerunner which allowed all Christian faiths to go around the world subjugating its inhabitants. And as I understand it, that hasn't been repudiated by the Catholic Church, it's still in place. When Europeans came to these indigenous lands, they brought Christianity, commerce, and civilization. Jomo Kenyatta often said, when the Christians came, or the missionaries came, we had the land and they had the Bibles. When we closed our eyes in prayer and then opened them, they had the land and we had the Bibles. This actually is part of the problem. Christianity is at the heart of commerce and has, from very early days, they've run hand in hand. It's only of latterly time that there's been a distinct separation. Unfortunately, this country, and one of the gentlemen already mentioned it, has selective memory. And that is part of the problem. I walk around, as I grew up in the society, I often wondered, how is it that this is such a pious and religious place that I can see all of this suffering around me? And clearly it's because everybody's lying to themselves. Every one of you should look in the mirror. Really. You are benefiting undoubtedly from your past history. Until you look at yourselves in the mirror and actually say, our king, our queen, our governments in the past have committed atrocities. We're very good at pointing fingers at other people, the Germans and the Jews, but quite conveniently forget our own forebears. This has to go beyond a simple apology. For me, what is needed is a re-education for each and every one of us, black and white. A re-education in the truth. And this is what the Christian faith is about. It is about repentance, and you cannot repent until you confess and accept your past behavior. You may not have actually taken part in it, but you are certainly benefiting from it. And you need to look at your forebears and say, you were wrong, and this is what I'm going to do to change it. Education is the start of this. And I come back to talk about Jesus Christ, because Jesus Christ, he gave us a very good model. He said, and this is not just talking about slavery, because this applies to the gender, it applies to class, so many divisions that have been created in our society to control us effectively. But Jesus Christ said, when asked what the greatest law was, he said that you must love your God, mind, body, and soul. And the second is that you must love your neighbor as yourself. If the Christian faith had been practicing any of this, could any of this have happened? Can you look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, have we been practicing this? Clearly not. Now is your opportunity to do so. The work needs to start on yourself first, each individual, not as a group, but individually. How am I going to change this? And that means you have to actually do some work. You need to go and find out the back history. You need to own it, and then you need to share it. You need to start changing the stories you tell yourself. You need to start changing the conversations you have with others. And also you need to start changing the language you use around this. Yes, this will be uncomfortable, and so it should be. Don't expect an easy ride, because it shouldn't be easy, because when change comes, if it's going to be effective, it has to be painful. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just remind speakers that the light system is there and the orange light comes on a minute before the end of your time. So please do try to stick to that time. I'm going to invite, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. Pat, thank you. And then, yes, so if you would speak first.
Pat Poyner, Northern Synod, member of Cascades of Grace, racial justice advocate. I was also a member of the task group, the Legacies of Slavery task group. And I often hear the comment, it's got nothing to do with me. Well, I want to bring to Assembly today that it's got everything to do with you. It's got everything to do with you because I am affected by the transatlantic slave trade. I am from the island of Trinidad and Tobago. And I have lived in this country for 52 years, and I have faced the invisibility that Karen talked about. But more so, you have benefited from the transatlantic slave trade's legacy. It is there in society. You've got to take ownership of it and apologize for it. It's the least you can do. And I want to bring to you today to say that when something is wrong, what do we say? We apologize and we say we're sorry. I do not know why it's difficult for members of the church, members of society, to say that it's difficult to say I'm sorry for the legacies of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade. I implore you today to accept this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. We have quite a number of people waiting to speak, and we have a second resolution on this paper. So at this moment, I just simply want to ask, using your orange and blue cards in the room and your green and red online, whether you would be happy, having listened to a number of speakers in support, whether you would be happy to move on to decision making sooner rather than later. So if you can show whether you are, if you are happy to move towards decision, show an orange card or a green. Sorry, an orange or blue here and a green or red online. Thank you. The vast majority of people appear to be ready. There was a blue card. Is that you wish to raise issues that might change the mind of Assembly?
Moderator Romilly Micklem, Wessex. You've said, we've heard several people speaking in favour of the motion. I don't think that it's actually appropriate to cut off when you haven't asked the speakers, people waiting to speak, whether they're going to speak in favour or whether they actually want to make a different contribution to the debate.
And that's why we asked for the orange and blue cards, so that if somebody waiting to speak...
Yeah, and if she didn't have her cards with her...
Okay, thank you. Do I take it that, Bridget, you have something that you want to add on a different level? So, yes, please do then. Right, sorry. If there are those who wish to speak challenging this resolution, having heard a lot of positive, then it would be helpful to hear from you.
Moderator John Bremner, Synod of Scotland. My concern is to pick up again on what was said earlier about this just being the Caribbean. If you walk around the streets of Glasgow, Fiona Bennett spoke earlier about Edinburgh, but
sorry, there's a point of order on the chat.
Oh, sorry, we have a point of order being raised by Angela Rigby online. So can we have Angela Rigby online, please?
Hello, sorry, I don't know if you can hear me or not. Angela Rigby, Southern Synod. I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't know you were going to talk to me. But it's basically, I just noticed that somebody online wanted to speak, and we had this thing about saying, well, we're going to move on, but I think you've decided to let people speak now, so you can ignore me if you like.
And there were people in the room, and I did say that. There were a number of people waiting to speak at that time. Can I just say this happened yesterday as well. When I've said that we need to move on, there have always been people in the room as well. It is not, it's not picking on those who are online. They are being seen, but thank you.
Oh, no, I didn't think you were picking on us, sorry. And there's a bit of a delay as well from you seeing our chat, so sorry about that.
Okay. So I think we move back to John Bremner.
Thank you, Moderator. With apologies or due respect to the Professor of History, you will know, I'm sure, Tom Devine, who's done a lot of work on the history of Scotland. And he takes us back into the 1700s, okay, before the Declaration of Independence by the colonies in what became the United States. And talking about Glasgow as an example, said that by 1758, Scottish tobacco imports were greater than those of London and all the other English ports out combined. In 1771, still before the Declaration of Independence, the highest ever volume of tobacco was landed, a staggering 47 million pounds of tobacco. Glasgow had become the tobacco metropolis of Western Europe, and in the west of Scotland, and this is the important bit of legacy, the profits of the trade fed into the very wide range of industries, founded banks, financed agricultural improvements through merchant investment. The transatlantic trades played a key role in the development of the Glasgow area, the region that was to become the engine of Scottish industrialization in the 19th century. So please don't limit this to the Caribbean, because a lot of the money that came into the Industrial Revolution through the cotton, the sugar, the tobacco, that money led into the 19th century Industrial Revolution. So it's not just the Caribbean. The legacy, our responsibilities as British, white British, go back into the 1700s as well. And I just wanted to say that, you know, the legacy is even greater than what's been said. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Bridget Micklem, Wessex Synod. I'm speaking with some trepidation on this subject because it's very emotive. And I want to say, first of all, I support what we're trying to do here. But as I said to Karen in the lunch queue yesterday, a critical friend won't agree always on absolutely everything. So I just wanted to make 4 points of commentary on the proposed resolution. The first one is that it is too easy to see sometimes that these things can be used as virtue signalling. And it is my experience that there are many who are prepared to sign up to these kinds of apologies who don't do anything practical. You can see that. I've been reading up Politico, which uses the example, unconnected to this, of the Spanish conquest of Mexico and how that is used as a debate. So my point is that if we're signing up to this, do not do this as virtue signalling. The second point is that if this is to be something that enables us to move forward and to unite us and lead to reconciliation, it has to be something that is truthful. So I'm a granddaughter of missionaries in India, and I have a very complicated relationship with what colonialism did, and I think it is played out not only in the treatment of blacks, but in the Brexit debate, which was really appalling. So the second point I want to make is thank you for taking the feedback from people that we needed to acknowledge the complexity of our past and those who in the past did try to fight the slave trade. I would like to see in the wording of the amendment a little bit more to celebrate that, even as we say that we didn't follow them up. And the third point is that I think we need to be clear. As I said, we're not just virtue signalling, but we must do things practically, looking in the mirror and then following it with action. Find things that ordinary Christians can do. Not everybody is a great activist. So let's find things that ordinary Christians can do. And the fourth point is that I would like us, before we make this statement, to be able to ground it back into our faith. So I would like the beginning of this statement to reassert our faith in one God, one Father, one Saviour, one Holy Spirit, the fact that we are all children of God, that God loves us equally, that each one is precious and unique in his sight. So basically what I'm saying to you is that I would like us to do this, but I would like a little bit more nuancing in the language. I don't know at this stage whether from the floor of the Assembly we can suggest amendments to the wording. But I did spend some prayerful time last night thinking about, could I illustrate the points I'm trying to make in drafting? And I have got something I could offer to you. I don't think we can vote on it, but my point is, it is thoughtful, offered commentary on this apology to make those points that I'm saying. Let's make this virtue signalling. let's make sure that we acknowledge properly what people did in the past to try and stop the slave trade. Let us make sure that we follow up with actions that ordinary Christians can do. And let's reassert our faith together. Then the apology is meaningful. The apology brings us united. And the apology is something I think we can all own. And I commend those thoughts to you.
Bridget,
Yeah.
can I just check? You're making comment on the text within there.
Yes,
so you're not trying to move an amendment to the resolution.
No, well,
itself.
the resolution asks you to adopt the text, so I'm a bit stuck.
Yeah,
and that's
okay.
because I'm new to Assembly. I don't know how we do this, right? So
That's
been
fine.
out.
We're just trying to clarify for ourselves
Yes,
here
okay.
what we're doing.
So you've taken it out to consultation. You've had a text that came back and you've added things in. What you're getting from me is a response from somebody in the room. We believe that the Spirit may move in Assembly. That is why we have us here. We don't just tick the box of what was given to us. Yeah. So I just don't know if it's possible to suggest some amendments. I just need to reflect to you how I've reacted to your text. And I'm someone for whom words matter, right? My job as a policy official is to write things and to write briefing for ministers and to write press releases and so on. I know that the actual words we use will matter. If we sign up to this, the words we have used will matter. I don't want a kind of apology that we put out to be something any other organisation could sign up to. It has to be ours, and that's why words matter.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask Sarah and or her team to respond to the discussion generally and perhaps particularly to the points made by John and Bridget.
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone who's contributed to the discussion. It's not easy to come to the front of General Assembly and say something, and it's particularly difficult when you want to say something that might seem to be against the flow. But it's important, and it's important that we all listen. So I'd like to just say to John, yes, we don't think what John said actually changes the resolution in any way, because you're talking about the legacies which are felt in many places in the world, but in the places that the United Reformed Church is present, in Scotland, Wales and England, that's the only place where we can, as the United Reformed Church, make an apology, because it's our apology. So I thank you, John, for the extra information, and I hope it encourages us all to look at our own areas and find out what the legacies are and where they come from. To respond to Bridget, I know what it's like to be new to Assembly. We've all been there once. We completely agree about virtue signalling. That's why there are two resolutions. The first is to put the marker in the sand, say, we confess, we apologise. The second is to say, what does that mean? We've got to do something about it. But we're not going for the quick fix, because there isn't a quick fix. This is something we need to live with. We've given ourselves a deadline, but we need to build this into our lives as a church. We need to be truthful, and I think we've heard a lot of truth today, and some of it's been very painful. For those people who've spoken about their own experience, it's painful. It's painful for you to talk about it. It's painful for us to hear it. Truth is important. And again, practicality, yes, this needs to be something that happens in a big picture, but it needs to be something that we all consider our own part in it and what we can do. And finally, perhaps the big one, the wording of the confession and apology. We have consulted on this 3 times. I'm afraid we know that no consultation is perfect, no consultation reaches everybody, but we have done our very best, and there was an opportunity at those points for people to suggest changes to the wording, and you've heard from Karen that some of those changes have been adopted. You will also see on the URC website those consultation responses from many churches. Some of those are very painful to read, some of those are really encouraging, That's also about truthfulness and honesty. So we are not minded to change the wording of the confession and apology because we believe it has had enough time for consultation and that we've reached the best we can do. It will never be perfect, but we think it's the best we can do.
So at this point, I just want to take the temperature in the room again and online as to whether you are happy to move to the decision-making on this. So if you're happy with decision-making, orange. If you're not, blue in the room, and the red and green online. Overwhelmingly, we are happy to move to the decision-making. Before we do that, I'm going to invite a chaplain, and I don't know which one I'm inviting, to just come and pray. And can we welcome Helen?
Let's pray together. Loving God, you are a God of mercy, but you are a God who sees our struggles. You are a God of new beginnings, of leaving behind things that bring us down, of movements by the Spirit to change our minds, our hearts, and our whole being. And you take our offering of words which might not be perfect, but you take the best that we can do and you change it into the best that it can be. And so we pray that our resolutions, our consultations, our feelings, our contributions today may be the beginning of a healing process which helps us all, which heals the hurts of the past, which brings us together in fellowship and understanding, and moves us and calls us forward into the life of your kingdom, which is all around us, present and even better to come. And we ask this in the name of our resurrected Lord, who is there beckoning us forward into new life together. Amen.
Amen. So I'd ask, can we launch a poll online, and those in the room, if you are in favour of Resolution 20, please show your green card. And if you are against, please show your green card now. Okay. It's overwhelmingly in favour, both in the room and online. So Resolution 20 has been passed. We are going to have to remainder Resolution 21 at this point because our next session involves groups who are visitors, and therefore we need to work around the timescales as written. So in a moment we are going to break for coffee. Sorry, I have one other notice as well. If anybody has any spare hearing aid batteries, Barbara, there's a couple of people behind you. Barbara, who is going to wave now, can you have a word with her? Coffee is now, reminder that if you are able to go down to the main house, please do so. The coffee machines up here can be used by people like the tech team and those with mobility issues. Please be ready to start business again at 11:30. track of the timetable. We are due back here at 11:15. I'm going to give you 5 more minutes, but please move fast. You can bring coffee into this room, I think. So bring your coffee back. Yeah.
the daily audio Bible, and that leads me then to pray. It's like a conversation between us and with God. So it's just taking time, just being together, just listening to God together.
Seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago, but all will be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays.
My own personal prayer life, it's varied. It depends. I listen and I read through the Bible each day. And very often that Bible will actually relate specifically to what's going on in that day, and that's really encouraging. It's like God speaking to me. But also just that moments of quiet, I find it's not so much what I say, it's what I hear. So just being silent before God I find really helpful, and that can be something that really inspires me. I know that when we've had challenges during lockdown at church, we were thinking London lockdown, tier 4, we couldn't really do anything, and we wanted to, particularly as a church plant, we wanted to kind of reach out into the community in some way. What I did was I just prayed. And I just got this picture of a tree, it's like a little archway in the local park, and I was thinking, what can we do for Christmas? And I just got that picture, and then I saw it lit up with lights, and I thought, right, we could do a glow trail. That'd be brilliant, a glow trail. And it's like God was speaking to me through that picture, if you like.
I ain't destiny and it's calling. I keep my head up high through the downs and lows, and we're all going life. Still nobody knows, but I'ma choose what's right and take what comes and goes. And ain't no one in life holding me back no more.
As a Christian, I believe that the Bible is relevant for everything that we do, and if I'm looking at a particularly difficult scenario, I go to the Bible and try and see what relevance the Bible has to that particular situation. We haven't always ministered in a church plant. Even now, my husband looks after 2 other churches as well, and it's really fascinating to see that people who have been Christian for many, many years perhaps haven't really understood a lot of what's in the Bible. And I love Google in the sense that if I'm trying to find something that's relevant to a particular situation, Google it and find it. And we used to have old concordances, which were books where they were in alphabetical order, but now you can really find relevant stuff to any situation in the Bible. So I'd urge you and encourage you that there's some great stuff in there, and it's really challenging, but it's also really inspiring. For every situation there's always something.
Back a year ago.
Just one practical thing to say after the last debate. If you are coming forward to speak, it's really helpful to bring your cards with you, because there will be times when we use the cards while people are queuing up. So it's just worth having those with you. So we move on, and we are now dealing with the paper B1, Children and Youth Work Committee. And we have Sam Sheehan, who is acting as convener of that group. And in case anybody is confused, Adrian Bully is now pretending to be Sam Richards and not John Bradbury.
Moderator, thank you. I present to you the Children and Youth Work Committee report, which is found on page year to the strategy, to offer time and space for reflection and evaluation of the work, support and ministry offered during a time of lockdown, uncertainty and newness. This was not a time of stagnation or standing still. And we offer our thanks to the Church House and Sido Plus team, who worked hard in producing a variety of resources for the challenging face of children and youth work and ministry. Following on from the decision made at General Assembly in 2021, we offer our thanks to the Pilot Subcommittee for the continued work in supporting and encouraging pilots companies throughout the URC, and recognise the formal work of this subcommittee has come to an end. We look to new ways of continuing to support pilots companies within the wider context of URC children, and continue to treasure the gifts that they continue to be to our churches. Pilots companies will continue to be supportive, receiving resources from the Children and Youth Work Office, and we support their online gatherings. Fundings held by pilots will be held by the Children and Youth Work Office, who will administer them going forward for the continued work of pilots. Moderator, I move to Resolution 3.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Sam, and apologies that I didn't say that Sam was speaking to Resolution 3, and we will be going back to 1 and 2. So we're on Resolution 3 on page 34 of the Book of Reports, and we're in the information session. So are there any questions for clarification or more information? I'm not seeing any either in the room or online. So is there any discussion on Resolution 3? So using your orange and blue cards in the room, your red and green online, can I just check, are you ready to move to a decision on this? I think we're ready to make a decision. So, if we could launch the poll online for Resolution 3, and in the room, if you are in favour of Resolution 3, can you show your green card? Okay, if you can put those down. Is there anybody against Resolution 3? Again, a green card in the room. We have consensus on that, so Resolution 3 is passed. Okay, we're moving on then to Resolution 1 first, and this comes from URC Youth.
I'd just like to start saying I'm a bit nervous, so be kind. Okay. At Youth Assembly, URC Youth passed a resolution asking Youth Executive to take a motion to General Assembly to allow young people at Youth Assembly the opportunity to nominate a General Assembly moderator. The thinking behind this resolution was to combat the issue of the diversity of the General Assembly moderator. Here's some stats for you. In the past 50 years, only once has the General Assembly moderator been a person of colour. There has also only been 6 women as moderator between the years of 1972 to 2010, and only 3 since 2010, where the moderator role changed from 1 moderator to 2, making the majority white men who tend to be middle-aged. The other reason...
That's polite.
The other reason that not every young person, the other reason is not that not every young person in URC Youth is a member of a URC church, or B, gets to go to their synod due to work, university, or sometimes there not being enough spaces for them. This motion will allow young people to have an opportunity to nominate someone, which will help to make sure that the moderator is more representative of the URC as a whole and ensure that the pool of people is wider. As a result, this will create an opportunity for a more diverse community, which is far more representative of the URC as a whole. Moderator, I so move this resolution.
Thank you. So this is Resolution 1, and I'd ask if there are any points for information clarification. Sorry, I'm just waiting a moment because I'm not sure whether people are finding their seats or coming to the front.
Rosalind Selby, Northern College, and this is a factual question. Is it usual for people who are not members of the URC, whatever age, to be able to participate in nominating General Assembly officers?
Okay. The clerk is happy to answer that if you would like him to.
Thank you. Thank you, Moderator. A few years ago, we agreed a special provision which has been written into the structure to enable young people who may not be URC members but are heavily involved in the URC in various ways to participate as members of General Assembly, even if they're not URC members. So we have already set a precedent for doing that.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions for information, so we move on to the discussion stage. So I'd invite you to put your hand up online or come forward if you want to raise points in discussion on this. And we have Anne Sardison online, please.
Thank you, Moderator. Anne Sardison, Eastern Synod. When I joined the URC in the early 90s, one of the things that really excited me about it was its approach and involvement of young people. I continue to be very enthused by the seriousness with which we listen to young people's voices within the United Reformed Church. And I simply wanted to affirm my support for this resolution and say I think it's a very, very exciting way that we work within the denomination and listening to our young people and to the precious gifts that they bring to the life of our denomination. Thank you.
Alex Clare Young, Eastern Synod, moderator, members of Assembly. I am very, very warm to this resolution, partly because of the wider equality and diversity implications that the speaker helpfully raised, and also because of the fact that we all in the room know that those who go to What Do You Think, our young people, often know what's going on in this room better than us, and so would serve us incredibly well as Assembly moderators. I want to note something that is slightly to the side of this topic, but I think is relevant, as you mentioned gender, I think 3 times in your speech, which I was really pleased about. And I'd like to ask that as you move forward with this, as the Business Committee, and I'm assuming the Nominations Committee perhaps, discuss this process, that they talk about gender more widely, because I know that several members of URC Youth are non-binary. I'm glad about that, and at the moment we only record whether people in our roles are male or female. So I hope that that can be part of your discussions going forward about who and what and how a youth moderator might look. Thank you.
Steve Faber, West Midlands Synod. Moderator, I'm not wholly in favour of this. I'm very keen that we should hear voices from children in the church and from youth in the church. I would much rather that this issue were being addressed through better inclusion of children and youth in the rest of our structures, rather than creating an additional route in for nomination. So I'm a little bit torn as to what to do with this, but I don't think it's quite the right answer.
Okay. Laura Everard, URC Youth GA Rep. Just in reply to the previous speaker, I completely agree that this isn't the end of the story for the URC looking at how we include young people's voices. And I do believe that we should be looking at, and synods and our local churches should be looking at how they include the voice of young people. But I'd just like to highlight something that's already kind of been mentioned before about how many young people are members of your local church. And if you have young people in your local church, are they members? Have they been offered membership? Or are they able to be members because maybe they have a job which works away from where they grew up, or they're at uni, or for any other reason? So it's a lot harder for young people to make a nomination or be aware that they are able to make a nomination through the usual channels that maybe a lot of other people who are really involved in their synods and General Assembly might be. So I think, yes, we absolutely should be encouraging young people in our local churches and our synods to be more engaged and to be able to make nominations and to be aware that that's something that they can do. But I think that this is just another avenue to do that, and by streamlining the process through allowing young people who come straight from their local churches, who often don't engage with synod, to come to youth assembly and to make nominations, I think that's a really important step. And I think that it's going to be something that's a lot more immediate than maybe something that's just more of a culture change or something that needs to trickle down throughout the whole church. So I think this is a really great resolution, and I'd recommend that we put it forward as another avenue to help young people make nominations and engage.
Okay.
Daniel Redding, Shock Synod. I apologise, the first time I've done this, I'm a bit nervous as well. I just wanted to add to that. It was my first youth assembly last year, and the reason that I voted for this motion was because as an LEP, we don't get the opportunity, maybe it's just a church thing, but we didn't get the opportunity to put forward a moderator because we're so conflicted in the denominations at the moment. So this was an easier and simpler way for us as young people to go to one place to be able to put the foot forward rather than going through this structure that we say is there, but realistically it's not clear. That's all I'd say. Thank you.
I think Ruth was first. Look.
Rebecca Smith, East Midlands Synod. I'm a relatively new member to the URC, having joined in February 2020, and then obviously COVID hit, so I couldn't get involved very much with anything. Youth Assembly this year was my first Youth Assembly, and then because I spoke up too much there, I've been asked to come to General Assembly. But this is really important because before I went to Youth Assembly, I only knew my minister. I didn't know anyone in the Synod. I didn't know anyone in the wider URC network. And actually, I wouldn't know how to put forward a nomination without the URC Youth Assembly and URC Youth.
Okay, Ruth, and then we've got someone online.
Ruth Whitehead, South Western Synod. Partly I'm concerned, I'm a synod moderator, so I would say this, that we mustn't undermine the work of the synods, but having heard the young people who've just spoken, I can see how this is an alternative way which could strengthen the voices of youth. My plea would be to all of us in our synods to make sure in our synods we're still listening to the voices that come back from Youth Assembly. We have a difficulty in the South Western Synod in finding people to go. Some of that's about geography, unless you can move Cornwall, it's really hard. But I really want our synods to hear the voices of youth. So I would say what I'd like is for the synods at our March meeting to be aware of the nominations that have come from Youth Assembly and have a chance to talk about those at synods, which is not trying to say it can only come through synods, but in addition to, I'm not suggesting to change the resolution, but to understand in addition to, don't forget synods. So let's make sure as synods we're listening to the young people, that the young people are talking loud and clear. Please carry on talking to the synods so we hear you loud and clear, but I support this resolution as an alternative extra to make sure we hear that voice. Thank you. Okay.
We go to Morag Donaldson online, and then I've got one more person in the queue, and then I'm minded to check out whether we're ready to make a decision. So Morag.
Hello, Morag Donaldson from the Scottish Synod here. We have a long history of youth being attached to the previous Congregational Church and now the United Reformed Church. I'm very warm to this resolution, and I did like the young man who spoke and said that this would appear to be his opportunity to be able to evaluate and nominate somebody that they would recommend. I also think, being as old as I am, that they are tuned in to much more the diversity and all the rest of it than most of us are at our age. And so I would, I'm so glad that they have brought this resolution, and I wish them every success with it. Thank you.
Mike Aspinall, North West Synod. I was a bit concerned that we've not seen point B of this resolution. It seems to be a bit that's shown up on the thing, because sorry, moderator.
Right, so sorry, on screen you've only been seeing A, and B is now in front of you, and it is the enabling it to be put into practice according to the law.
Yeah.
Or the clerk's
I was going to say,
interpretation of.
this actually, if this Part B is active, is part of the resolution. This helps how the Youth Assembly then actually work through to the nomination process. And the other point I wanted to make is actually Resolution 4. When you read the bottom, the last bit of Resolution 4, when we come down to that, if we are actually going to do it, we're hopefully going to pass a resolution which will give young people a voice in all councils of the church. And I think it's important, all councils of the church means General Assembly as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. The clerk wants to make a comment.
Thank you, Moderator. I just thought it may be helpful for Assembly to be aware that we don't actually always use all aspects of the current process for producing nominations for Assembly Moderator. There are some synods which I cannot recall ever having sent a nomination of a name for consideration by the Assembly as Moderator. I'm not convinced every synod always reminds local church meetings every year that they can send in nominations, and synods can also accept nominations from members of synods. So if your synod has youth members, they could also nominate that way. None of this is to comment on the resolution itself, but merely to alert Assembly that we're not actually doing everything we could do already.
Thank you. So can I just take the temperature of the meeting about whether you are ready to move to decision making on this? So orange if you're ready, blue if you're not, and red and green online. It appears that we are ready to move. Can I just ask, if you are holding a card up, can you just hold a single card up? Because I could see one blue one and I realised it was in the hand of somebody with an orange one in their hand as well. And also, if you hold them up and you've got your cards together, people behind you may think you've got a different colour card. It can get confusing. So we are ready to make a decision on this. So can we launch the poll online? And if you are in favour of Resolution 1, then please show a green card in the room. And if you can lower your hands, and if you are against Resolution 1, please show a green card. Okay. It is overwhelmingly both online and in the room in favour of Resolution 1. So Resolution 1 is passed.
Moderator, we have tended to have a convention in the Assembly of not applauding speeches, and it does seem today as if we're getting more and more applause as measures of opinion on each speech, and it may be more helpful if you considered asking Assembly whether it really felt that was helpful.
I think you asked for that, Michael. I think it is wise in the same way as in past meetings where people have waved cards of various colours at times to support or not support as speeches are happening. So if we can limit our applause to places that are not about opinions at this point, and that does not mean that URC Youth can't go and celebrate afterwards. I'm going to move us on to Resolution 2, which may be relatively simple, but I recognise that anything that the Chair says might be simple will turn into something complicated. So if we can present Resolution 2, and if it seems that we can move swiftly to a decision, then we will, and if not, we'll have to remainder it.
Resolution 2 is on the order paper. What's on the
yes,
screen
I'm
is
sorry.
still the original version.
Sorry. On the order paper, the second order paper from Friday, there was a revised Resolution 2, and I'm afraid it's not what's on the screen at the moment. It is very clear that the meaning behind it is the same. It's been rewritten into resolution speak rather better. So I'm going to ask Joe if you could present, and we will get the right resolution behind you as soon as we can.
Thank you, Moderator. We as URC Youth would like to reaffirm our commitment to tackling the stigma around mental ill health and would so like to encourage General Assembly and synods to look into ways to supporting people in their congregations and their churches and their synods to undertake this training. Some stats for you. According to Mind, a British mental ill health charity, 1 in 4 people will experience a mental health issue of some kind in 1 year. And 75% of diagnosed mental illness starts before the age of 18. In the URC, we currently have 2 instructor members for the Mental Health First Aid England course, which Children Youth Work Committee enabled. From the period of 2021 to 2022, combined, they have trained 97 mental health first aiders. We're calling on synods and General Assembly to look into ways to enable local church leadership teams and synod officers to undertake this training and provide training to allow the MHFA instructor members in both Wales and Scotland too. We as URC Youth would like General Assembly to join us in recommending that at least 1 member of the church leadership team is a trained mental health first aider so that we as church can continue to fight the stigma around mental ill health and support those facing difficult times. Moderator, I so move this resolution.
Thank you. So are there points of information, clarification? It seems not. Are there points of discussion?
Louise Sanders, Northern Synod, also a member of Scottish College, third year ordinand, and I'd like to ask if the RCLs would consider this as part of the training for ordinands, as I think this is something that would be very useful.
Megan Westgarth, Yorkshire Synod. I just wanted to say that I fully support this resolution. As mentioned in the paper, there is a massive stigma surrounding mental ill health. And I personally am in a lucky position in which I've managed to have access to the Mental Health First Aid England training through URC Youth Exec. And it would just be a fab opportunity to see the wider URC be able to help us as URC Youth fight the stigma.
I too agree with the...
Sorry, can you introduce
Carol
yourself?
Clack, Southern Synod. I too agree with the resolution. However, I don't think it goes wide enough because mental health isn't just a youth thing, it's an adult thing as well. And I would say that there needs to be training for all ages, yeah? And also, I think I'm moving back to the last thing on our agenda, that actually there is some healing and some restorative work that needs to be done on mental health from the past and the effects it has had on people and their standing and their ability to function and to be accepted as part of the community.
Thank you. We do have an order of the day which brings the Community Award Project Awards in at 11:12, whenever we are. And so now. So I'm sorry, I'm going to have to... Sorry, no, we are not going to take anything else on this at this point. We will have to remain to this. It was a hopeful looking at Resolution 2 at this point. So thank you, and we will come back to this. Okay, Assembly, we will go back to that business, but we now come to one of the joyful parts of our Assembly, which is the Community Project Awards. For nearly 25 years, the United Reformed Church has been recognising outstanding community projects taking place in its churches. Projects that don't get the recognition they deserve, but which demonstrate the mission of the church by reaching out in many different ways to the local communities which they serve. The United Reformed Church has partners with Congregational, and we are again deeply grateful to them for donating £6,000 in prizes and for agreeing to make the awards each year after we went back to holding our General Assembly annually. Each year, 3 awards of up to £2,000 are made. Despite many churches still getting back to the new normal after the pandemic, we received dozens of entries, and after the initial scrutiny, 5 projects were shortlisted. After visits to each of these projects, 3 winners were selected, but because of the quality of the other projects, the judges have also awarded 2 highly commended awards with the hopes that these projects will consider entering the awards again. I'd like to thank the judges of the awards, Margaret Slater from Congregational, Derek Estell, Andy Jackson, Marani Jones, Sue Cossey, Pete Twiley and Joe Patterson, and Andy Jackson, Hannah Clark, Matt Collins and Laura Taylor for the videos and images. You will be able to watch the videos of the shortlisted projects on the URC's YouTube channel and the Congregational website. And you can read about the projects in Reform magazine later this year. So I'd now like to welcome Margaret Slater, Congregational Head of Marketing, to say a few words and to introduce us to the 3 winners. Thank you, Margaret.
Hello everyone, and thank you for inviting me here again today. It's been a while since we've done it in person, and it really is an honour for me to present the Community Project Awards. As already been mentioned, Congregational Insurance has sponsored the programme initially since 1997, and we remain committed to supporting the work undertaken by individual churches to establish and maintain initiatives within their local communities. We believe that these make a real difference, and we're delighted to acknowledge the efforts of the volunteers, church workers and employees in some instances through our awards programme. I've had the privilege of sitting on the judging panel since 2006, and it kind of takes me out of my day job, if you like, and takes me into this wonderful world where people come together with a common purpose to provide much needed services for their local communities. Over the lifetime of the awards, including those receiving the awards today, we've actually recognised 61 churches across the UK for establishing these projects, many of which are still running and continue to flourish. I hope the representatives of some of those previous winners are here today, and I'd like to say to you and our winners that you have a lot to be proud of. As has already been mentioned, the standard's very high when we get the nominations, and the decision to select those for an award is never easily taken. A lot of people come up and ask me afterwards why they weren't selected, and it truly isn't an easy task, and each year it depends on who applies. But I would like to say to anyone who has previously applied or applied this year, you can celebrate in the knowledge of knowing that your efforts are recognised by your own community, and I don't want to discourage anybody from entering again, either next year or in future years. It's not really about the money, but it kind of is in a way. And I hope that the money that we give to each of the projects today will help you to continue with the good work that you're doing. So as has already been mentioned, we have 3 equal winners. So in no particular order, I'm going to announce that the first winner of the 2022 Community Project Awards is Skipton Wellbeing Cafe, which is held at St Andrew's United Reformed and Methodist Church in Skipton. And we're going to run a video that shows you some of the work that they do. Are we running the videos?
was set up by accident. We didn't mean to set up a cafe, but a group had lost their funding, particularly a group helping people with mental health issues, and we said collectively, this is not good.
And I talked about it with some of the people that I knew, and we just picked it up almost immediately and ran with it, and it's just grown.
Our basic principle was, let's have some decent cake and nice coffee. Basically, that was the start. A typical session, we open at 1, we have free tea and coffee, cakes, biscuits, fruit, that sort of thing. And we offer also some cooked food. We do toasties and jacket potatoes because we found a number of people hadn't eaten, so we thought it was a good idea that they did.
Well, personally I find it's a great way to sort of help people out, but also I find it's a great way for people to sit and communicate with the community, bring everyone together and, you know, just tighten everything up, you know, because people are on their own most of the time, so they're going to want to come down here. And everyone's friendly and polite, everyone works with each other. And you can open up a load of links and have different groups come here and go to different groups from that point onwards.
We have a collaboration with a group called Pioneer Projects, who specialise in art and craft provision, along with mental health support, wellbeing support and dementia support. So they provide us with a sort of a bit of a safety net in areas that we're perhaps a little bit less knowledgeable.
Just a place to be comfortable and relax and make friends. Yeah. And if they need advice, we can find out who can help them.
So we've got Mind in our area. We also have our debt council service, CAP debt service, and our job club. Folks who come in quite regularly. So we very much see ourselves as working with them and providing additional expertise through their knowledge and experience.
It helps that we have the support of the food bank with surplus food, because that really is very good, so we can open a pantry.
It's like a little hub and the regulars come in and you sort of have a laugh and a joke and it brightens people's day.
There are a lot of people who would be on the streets otherwise, a lot of people who would be very depressed and visiting the doctor more than they have done in the past. I'm sure we keep a lot of people off the streets.
Okay, so now I'd like to invite Rachel Coombs and Judith Duxbury from St Andrews to come up and receive the award. I'm relieved that you clapped on that one. The next winner of the awards is the Community Uniform Swap Shop at St Columba's United Reformed Church in Wolverhampton. And again, we've got a video to show you what they do for their community.
We wanted a community project, an eco-community project, but we're a small church, so we couldn't do anything amazingly massive. So we thought, well, what can we do that will make a difference? And I'd recently moved back to the area and bought uniforms for my children. and realised just how expensive it can be. And there wasn't any second-hand options available to us. So we thought, well, let's see if we can help there and collect uniform in and give it out to people. And everyone was behind it, so off we went. So we started in the vestibule of the church with, at the time, 3 or 4 schools, and it quickly grew to more than a dozen. We now have 58 schools, so we created an actual swap shop for people to come in and choose in a comfortable environment for the children and for the parents. Any school that donates lost property to us, we weigh it when it comes in, so we can tell them exactly how much has been saved from landfill, and then we let them know how much carbon dioxide that would have released to create that again. And also the water pollution that comes with clothing is massive, so we're saving water pollution as well. We've had people that came to Sunday school here or youth club here come back and reconnect with us and reminisce with us and bring their children. So we're no longer just the building on the corner. We're now the church that they used to go to and that they bring their children to see, oh, I did Sunday school here. And hopefully that will continue, and maybe in the future, who knows, when they bring their children in.
So please welcome Ross Shaw and her husband Nick from St Columba's. And the third and final winner of the Community Project Award is Roca Life, which is held at Roca United Reformed Church in Sunderland. And again, we've got a video to show what the work that they're doing for their community.
We've had a role in the community which was relatively informal until Helen Stevenson, a church-related community worker, joined us in 2013. Helen made us reappraise really what we were doing in community, but recognised that we had beginnings that could be nurtured. She recommended to us that because we weren't a big church then and we're smaller now in numbers, that we should look for partners who had a heart and a sense of care for the community to work with us.
We work in partnership. We rent the space privately to run our sessions, and we work with the community side of the church, which is Roca Life, in partnership with Forget Me Not Wellbeing, to deliver grassroots activities to mostly vulnerable people in the local area.
We've kept true to our intention originally to work with families in need, which mainly translates to working with refugee and asylum seeker families, which we've done for many years, and also with isolated and lonely adults in the community. So those are the two strands that we've developed, using the skills that are in the teams that we work with.
I'm here at the moment, we've got the volunteer training Cootie course, which has just started last week, upskilling local people, so they get some food safety training, pick up a few recipes in the kitchen. It's a very small, intimate group, so they get a lot of one-to-one. With the view to them getting their food hygiene certificate, which we'll support them through. Once they've got that, they can volunteer within the kitchen, and it helps their job prospects as well. A lot of the work that we do does centre around local kids, vulnerable kids, 40. During the summer, we have a set number of days set aside for 40 families. We're now pushing the more family angle to try and get families to spend more time together. Like I was saying before, this is a beautiful space, and there's not many private spaces in the area.
One of the ladies who's here today is a member of a local church, I won't say which one, a regular, and she said to me recently, my church doesn't have half the activities that you've got here to meet somebody like me who needs to meet people, who wants to meet people, who wants to be part of a community. I often say when I see things happening, God is at work here, which is recognised by the other Christians and acknowledged by those who don't wear the badge of Christianity, but nevertheless care and love their communities.
Okay, so now please welcome David Dick and Dorothy Muckles from Roker United Reformed Church. And finally, we can now watch videos from the two highly commended community projects. These were West Can Community Choir from Westfield and Cannington United Reformed Churches in Bridgewater, Somerset, and the Dulwich Grove Community Lunch at Dulwich Grove URC in London. Thank you.
We have quite a big fair that happens in Bridgewater, which is a huge kind of community event, an amazing kind of get together with the community. We wanted to do something with the children, so we decided to do like a little sort of freestyle pop-up, what do you call it, flash mob type singing thing, which was so successful. We decided to meet the next week and the next week, and we've grown and grown and grown into West Can Show Choir. Pre-COVID, we were really fortunate because we were invited to sing at quite a few different things. Sung in the carnival concert, so that's a nice platform for the church in terms of the community. So it's for 14 nights, and literally thousands of people watch it, and over 600 people involved in it, so that's huge for us. But we've also done things like singing in nursing homes, singing in schools, so there's so much opportunity for it to go out into the community as well, and I adore that about it.
The risk of being corny is a sort of good news project in the sense that it is a setting in which children find their feet, find a lot of self-confidence.
She wouldn't mind me sharing her story, but she's got high-functioning autistic, and she really struggled in confidence, but she has an incredible voice. So she's done several solos with us and still struggles,
still struggles to get that motivation and confidence, but she's been incredible in that journey.
I think too that one of the secrets is Meg herself. She's actually very skilled as a youth worker, and so when the children hit snags in life and the families hit snags in relation to the children, she's got a whole range of skills that she can bring to bear. So she's very keen, for example, I notice, and I love it, that she wants anybody who ever wants to sing a solo, they'll get their spot. It's not a question how good you are. Even in competitions, she refuses to only go for the ace players, but to give every kid the chance that the kid wants.
So one of my highlights has to be our performances, particularly when we've been involved with things like we did the mayor making event, we've done the youth awards and things like that, where you see this combination of the young people coming together and outside of this building showing their confidence and their self-esteem that have grown through this programme, and I absolutely adore that. And I love seeing the other children and young people supporting newer members. That's one of the things that's just so precious, you know, when they're nervous or whatever, just standing by them or singing with them. And yeah, the highlight for me are definitely performances, but feeling that those values that of love, inclusion are being kind of being spread for our young people, and now they're taking on that ethos. So I love that. And it feels like home, it feels like church, and that's really important for us. So even though sometimes our kind of Christian values aren't obviously on display, in the way that it makes people feel, I think it's incredibly tangible, and I love that about it. Yeah, I'm a little bit proud of them.
As you can see, you know, we have a variety of ranges from one right the way through. So
I think the lunch club spills off into well-being. So well-being spiritually, the mental well-being. And when you talk to their carers and you talk to them, it's been quite therapeutic, because we make sure that we look after them pastorally.
People don't realise, you know, that playing dominoes, playing bingo actually does stimulate your mind. You
They
know?
love bingo.
Yeah.
And, but it's all about
helping
stimulating
their mental
them.
health.
During the lockdown, the lunch club was absolutely crucial. Keeping in touch with people, keeping some of our members sane, and it was really difficult. But we did a takeaway service as well, and so we took these cakes round to people who weren't able to come out at all, and delivered them on their doorsteps.
We do acknowledge main events, so
Mhm.
we've done St Patrick's Day,
Yeah.
we did Valentine's,
We did a lovely
obviously
Valentine's
Christmas
one.
lunch was
Oh my goodness.
75 people attended.
We have a really healthy partnership with the probation, with the Inner London probation service, and so we're able to then influence young people who have, well, some of them have been adults really, not just young people, but on the whole they've been younger people. But we've been able to influence them, and share different things, help them to get back on proper footing and on the right pathway. And there was a young woman that was here who came to do her community service, and I was leading a service in North London, and she said, "Oh, I'm so glad to see you." She was there in church and participating, and she's kind of like said, "Oh, I'm not going to be there again. I'm going to come back to help, but I'm not going to be there. But I want to thank you for all you did," because we had her in the kitchen, and so that's another place where the church has been able to spread its influence, and that work for me as well. I find it really rewarding if you can get someone back on the right track. Then we're doing something. We're doing something good in the community.
So having previously made the comments about not applauding, the folks who have come to receive the awards, and Margaret, I think, are probably now leaving us, although they're welcome to stay for the next session. But I think we ought to give them just one more round of applause. And moving back to our business, I'm going to invite Sam Sheehan to come and introduce Resolution 3. It's on page 34. Thank you.
Moderator, it's my pleasure as temporary convener of Children and Youth Work Committee to be able to be here at the launch of URC Children. Hey! Morning, General Assembly! URC children are here! We hope you've had a really lovely morning and as good a morning as we've had, because we've had a fantastic morning. And we are here just so that you get the chance to hear the voice of some of URC children. On your seats, everybody has been given a portrait, a pen portrait of a child. These are real children in the United Reformed Church. We've been inundated with pictures and children of all ages telling us what's special to them, telling us about their age and drawing a self-portrait. We wanted to say this to you earlier. In your decision making, you are making decisions not only for the adults of the church, not only for the young people of the church, but every single decision you make is for the children of the church. They are the church of today, not the church of tomorrow. And we really, really value what they have to say to us. So please, the child who's on your seat is your child for the whole of General Assembly. When you're voting, you are voting with that child in your mind. And please take that child home with you and pray for them when you get home. Now, our ambassador is busy delivering some stickers. Well done, Jackson. And everything that you see and hear is done for us by our youth, not by our young people, not by the people who are with them. We are launching URC Children. We've got the big umbrella because we're remembering, can any of the children can you shout and think, who did we remember was under the umbrella? Who have we got under there? So people from holiday clubs. Yeah, those churches where there are only one child, they come under the umbrella still of URC Children. Have we got anybody else? Lily, what do you do at church? What do you do with the other children? Do you remember? What do you do? Lily goes to Sunday school, so we're thinking all the Sunday schools come under our umbrella. Anything else? Where's Jackson gone? Where's he gone? I've lost him. Jackson, where did you go on Saturday? Jackson. He's behind you. Jackson goes to Messy Church. It's for all the children in Messy Church. It's for all the children in pilots. It's for all the children in anything that happens with anybody 12 and under. And it's all about giving children a voice. So we're going to give our children a voice this morning. Poppy, can I hand over to you? Are you going to come up? Come up. Shall I take your banner? Thank you.
Is it provide the resolution, or is it the...
No, first.
Okay.
So I was talking to Poppy this morning about what things are important for her.
Can you use the microphone?
Yes, sorry. So I was talking this morning with Poppy to ask her what things are important to her and what she feels the church needs to hear. And I know we have a very eloquent young lady who's going to share her thoughts with you.
There are some people who are a little bit misunderstood, like at our church, and they feel they have to steal from churches just to survive. But I think everyone deserves a second chance, that we should help them, but also we should be careful when helping them, because it's about helping them get a second chance and helping them be able to thrive as a Christian.
Thank you, Poppy.
Just because a young person says something, you don't have to applaud them. We can appreciate Poppy without being, without applauding, because we love what you're saying, Poppy.
Yeah. Bring your banner back. Daniel, would you like to? Sorry, I do it every time. Michael, forgive me. Come and... Okay, you happy just to talk? Yeah.
At my church, all our services are led by one person. A couple of times the elders at my church will lead the services and take part, but other times it's just one person. I feel like people should get more involved in this sort of stuff, like the services and all this sort of stuff at the churches.
We were going to have a hand mic for the...
Keith's got it at the back there.
Oh, Keith.
Give it to a child, Keith.
Can you give it... Oh, no. Can you give it to Lily? Richard, can you help with Lily's? Lily, can you tell everybody what you've drawn on your T-shirt? What have you drawn? What can you see? What can people see on your T-shirt?
A rainbow.
She's drawn a rainbow. And what is it next to the person that you've drawn?
Heart.
A heart and a...
Tree.
A tree. And Lily was thinking that we want to look after our world as our church. Where's Jackson? Jackson, come here. Jackson has something written very important on his T-shirt. Can you say really loud and clear what you have on your T-shirt? It says...
Yes.
And that's because when we, as children, say what we want our churches to hear, we wish that they would say...
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jackson. Where's Daniel? So again, I've been talking to Daniel this morning, who has things that he'd like to share with you. Show them the back of your T-shirt. His T-shirt is sponsored by DJ Daniel. So if any of you in your churches need to book anybody for any discos, I understand his rates are really quite reasonable. Daniel, what would you like to say to the church?
I'm going to say Christmas time, as it's time for having fun with family and friends. Maybe have more church parties. And aim the services maybe at kids just a little bit more than at the adults, so you can involve the children and make them feel a part of it.
Fantastic, thank you. So we really hope that you will celebrate with us. You can see our children have a lot to offer in all that they bring to our churches. Not just, as Claire said, we don't need to patronise children by looking and thinking how sweet, how lovely, oh, they make us feel happy that they're here. They have something to bring. They are gifted by God and they are a gift to the church. So let's hear their voices. So we'd like you to celebrate, hopefully, the launch of URC Children. We have a cake, so if you vote no on the next resolution, I'm really sorry. But Poppy, can you come here a minute? I think you have a job to do.
URC Children would like to ask Sam Sheehan to provide a resolution.
Thank you very much, Poppy. For many years, the work of children's and families had been siloed into groups and organisations which have served the church well. But it's made it challenging to share resources. Our hope is that in creating this umbrella of URC Children's, we can streamline the support for all children and families groups within the URC, making it easier in producing and sharing of resources, offering one place where all groups can find a resource to help them in their ongoing ministry and enable networks to be formed. We also hope that this will raise the profile of children within the life of the church, enabling their voices to be heard in all structures and councils of the church, as we seek to learn together and from each other to hear the voice of God moving us forward. General Assembly in 2018 passed a resolution to task the Children's and Youth Work Committee with evaluating the Charter for Children and to bring a charter to General Assembly in 2020. Children and Youth Work, in collaboration with URC Youth, worked on the Charter for Children in Church and developed a draft 3 Eyes Church proposal towards becoming an inclusive, intercultural and intergenerational church, which was then passed to other committees for consultation. General Assembly was not held in 2020, and by 2021 a number of other things had developed, such as the move to becoming an anti-racist church and the proposal to develop URC Children. In many ways, Resolution 4 is the outcome of the work prompted by General Assembly in 2018. URC Children will provide the impetus to continue this work across the whole of the URC. Moderator, I move Resolution 4.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you for getting the right resolution number. That was mistake number 1. The clerk wishes to speak just very briefly about one little matter on this.
Thank you, Moderator. There's a small typo in Resolution 4 where the councils of the church are listed. It should, of course, as we all know, say local church meeting, elders meeting, synod and general assembly. I'm hoping you'll trust us to make sure that's correct in the minutes.
Okay, can I just see using your blue and orange card, so orange cards if you're happy with that typo being put right, and red and green online. You'll be glad to know, Clerk, that they're okay about it. Okay, so especially for those who are new into the meeting, what we do now is discuss that idea of launching URC Children. So I'm going to ask whether anybody needs any more information about this resolution. Oh, and by the way, if any of the children want to speak, I'm likely to give them permission. I don't think anybody needs any more information. Does anybody want to discuss anything about it?
Philip and I to say something together.
Yeah? As long as you both introduce yourselves.
Joe Harris, Youth Assembly Moderator.
Philip O'Shea, Youth Assembly Moderator-elect.
We would just like to thank the children that have come here today and welcome them to the URC family. You guys, you make us church, you help us to make decisions, and we cannot wait to work with you as your older siblings and help you make decisions and help us make decisions and help the church make decisions. And we're so excited to see all the things that you do. So thank you.
Anyone else want to contribute to a discussion?
Sorry, Jeff Hughes, Mersey Synod. Just a point of clarification. Is Youth Assembly a council of the church? And should it be in this?
No.
Bearing in mind what we're going to do about nominations of
No,
moderators.
the councils of the church are set out in the structure.
So that's not that we don't listen to Youth Assembly, but they're not officially a council. Okay. Any more comments or discussion about this?
Lithan Nevard Eastern Synod, not wanting to keep speaking, but I sometimes we need to just have a few affirmations, and so I just wanted to affirm this. As I go around my synod and talk to churches, especially about how they're recovering from lockdown, one of the things I've heard most is, but our children and families haven't come back. And I think so finding the right mechanisms to listen to the children that we still have, and thank you for being faithful to us, perhaps it indicates that we haven't been listening as well as we could in that time when they were with us. So it's really important to fully embrace URC children and find ways in which we can bridge those gaps for the children in our communities as well.
Moderator, permission to speak.
Yes.
I think it's important to listen to children because although we may be younger than adults, we still have ideas to contribute, and that in my church we always let the children decide and contribute, but sometimes in other churches there might not be a lot of children, but still that one child might have an idea to contribute.
Thank you.
Judy Harris, National Synod of Wales. Children have so much to teach us and so much to say to us, and so much wisdom. And today we're in the presence of some amazing, wise people. We need to learn to listen to them more. And we need to learn that actually in everything that we do and in every decision that we made, the children's voice has to be heard in all of that. So thank you for this resolution.
Okay, Dan.
Thank you, Moderator. Dan Morell, Yorkshire Synod. 12 years ago, I was a child. Some of you may disagree that is now no longer the case, but I've been trying my best. 12 years ago, I attended Children's Assembly in 2010 at the University of Loughborough. And for me, it was one of the most formative times, despite being only 13 years of age. I felt listened to even at that point, which actually was a really special thing. And what it did for me over the 12 years since has been quite moving, very moving for me. It's helped me along my faith journey. And that was a point because I knew that my voice was being heard. And even if, just like at the rest of General Assembly, we feel like a decision might not go our way, it's not really about that. It's about having our voices being heard for the first time, maybe, or just making sure that we are heard. And I just really welcome that opportunity now and indeed in the future to hear the voices of children, just as I was heard when I was a child, and well, you can see what effect that's had on me.
Dan, I thought you were speaking in favour. I think you've just turned... I'm not seeing anybody else either online or in the room wishing to speak. So can I just test, using those orange and blue cards, are you ready to make a decision about this? Sorry, it's the red and green online as well, but you know that, don't you? We are ready to make a decision. So we use our green cards in the room and we're launching a poll online. Resolution 4 is being moved. So if you're in favour of Resolution 4, please show your green card here. And if you can lower your hands, and if you are against Resolution 4, can you show your green card? We have consensus. That means everybody's agreed. So thank you, Assembly. We're now moving into worship, and I think the children are going to come and sit down amongst you. And I want you to invite you to take a look at, possibly even hold in your hand, the card on your seat that describes a young person in our church. And as you worship, I want you to hold that person alongside you as if they were here in the room. So I'm going to hand over to Helen and Lindsay, I think. And after worship, we are having lunch. And what I would ask you to do is to give the young people and their leaders a chance to leave the room first for lunch so that they can go and don't get lost or knocked down by the rest of us. And could I have the lollipop mic wherever that's gone to, please?
Hello, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Helen, and I've got a very long title. I am the chaplain to the moderator of General Assembly. Now, the moderator of General Assembly was sitting up here in the scarfy thing, but she's gone to the back for now because she's put a URC Children hoodie on. And she has a microphone because she's going to help me do some worship. Now, for those of you who weren't here yesterday, I wasn't here in person yesterday either. I was on the screen because I am just getting over COVID, and I tested positive. I tested positive yesterday, but negative this morning. So I've almost just got here. I think I got here after you children, actually. So that's just a little bit about me. And I wanted to say that I am wearing this scarf here because it is a Jubilee scarf. We're in a Jubilee year of the United Reformed Church. And as Dan has shared how old he is, I'm going to share that I was 7 years old when the United Reformed Church started. I was a child in the church. I was encouraged to be listened to. I was one of those children who were picked for things like doing the reading. and I was encouraged in that. And I wouldn't be here today without the encouragement that I received throughout my church life within the United Reformed Church. And I wouldn't be here today without the encouragement from the children with whom I've been privileged to work in my church life, and my own children, and now my little granddaughter. Some of my family are here at Assembly, just to show you what encouraging your children can do. I have 4 children, only one of them is here, you'll be glad to know. So I'm going to invite us to worship God together. I have no idea how this worship is quite going to work, being hybrid, having our children within us, hoping that it's going to work as well for the people who are at home as it is here. But with God's help, we will give it a go. And so we're going to start with our hymn, and Alex is at the piano. Give thanks to the Lord, our God and King. His love endures forever. I'd invite you to stand, and if you want to dance, clap, whatever, please do so.
His
Please be seated. And let's pray together. Lord God, let us hear your word as if for the first time. The gospel of Christ. Thanks be to God. Now we're going to try a bit of community storytelling together. Yesterday there was a comment in the discussion that said, it's great when we tell each other the stories. Our Bible is a whole complete book of stories that people told to each other. They didn't necessarily write it down first. They told each other the stories and then they got written down. And this is particularly the case with the story that we're going to share with each other today. And it's one of the most famous stories Jesus told. And I was hoping that I was going to be able to come and wander around and help us tell our stories together. But considering that I've just come out of isolation, I've given the job of wandering about with a roving microphone to the moderator, for whom I am the chaplain. She's going to keep you safe, and I'm here. And I'm also hoping that with the help of the technical team, we can get contributions from people online as well. So people online, I'm going to ask you some questions that are just for you. And I'm going to ask some questions for people in the room, because I think that's the best way to go about it. So, we're not going to hear this story. We are going to tell each other the story. And the story is often known as the Good Samaritan. I'm not quite sure why we call it the Good Samaritan. It's a bit of a shorthand. When I was in France, a very long time ago, I had the job of translating into French from English, and bearing in mind I was doing a French degree, but my French wasn't amazing. Anyway, I was translating, and I didn't have the kind of Bible shorthand in French that I've just used in English. The Good Samaritan is kind of shorthand for that one story, and I had to practically tell the whole story, by which time the person who was leading the Bible study that I was in was miles ahead of me, and the poor French people had to catch up, and I wasn't, So I'm just saying, the Good Samaritan is the shorthand for the story that we're going to tell. And my first question for us to think about together is, what we can remember is, who was Jesus talking to when he started to tell this story? Hands up in the room, please. Does anyone know who Jesus was talking to when he started the story?
A lawyer who asked him, what do you have to do to inherit the kingdom of God?
What about the room? Do we think that's the right answer? Can you wave your hands if you think it's the right answer? I'm getting lots of waves. That's right.
There's a few people not waving, though. I'm wondering if there are alternate answers.
Are there? Does anyone have an alternate answer they want to share? Can anyone... Oh, hang on. Poppy. Is it Poppy? Say it again, please.
An expert in religion.
This lawyer was an expert in religion. Now, Rosalind's nodding at me. That's always a good point. Rosalind is...
For the children's sake, Rosalind runs a whole college.
She does, and she taught me almost all I know. Great. So now we have got Jesus talking to an expert in religion. So, what did the expert in religion ask Jesus? And this is a question for online. So online, could you put your hands up, please, if you have an answer? And your online hands up. Yes. Sam, could you give us that answer, please?
Who is my neighbour?
Thank you, Sam. Does anyone online think there was, and that is a very good answer. Does anyone online think that there was another question? Yes, whoever it is, it's Morag, isn't it? Go on, Morag.
Sorry, mixing myself up here. I think he was asking, who is my neighbour, in an effort to trip Jesus up, basically.
Thank you, Morag. That is indeed the right answer. But just before then, here we go. The expert in religion asked Jesus, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Okay? Now, hands up everywhere. Do we think that Jesus gave him the right answer? Yes. Hands up for yes. Did Jesus give him the answer? There's a couple of hands up here. Who thinks that Jesus did not give the lawyer the answer? Okay. We're a bit undecided here. Yes, please, Claire.
Do you want to say something about that?
He didn't answer the question. He gave him a story to make him think about it for himself.
That is right. I have an objection from the middle.
Can I get through? I know this is an exercise for me, but...
I didn't check my Bible, but I thought Jesus said, love God above everything and love your neighbor above yourself, as yourself. And then he challenged, who is my neighbor?
Thank you.
And can I say that phones should be away at this point?
Old style. Old style. So we're all fairly right. Here we go. Because in fact, Jesus asked the expert in religion, what do you think the answer is? And the expert in religion said, you should love God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul and all your strength, which is the first commandment. And he said, and you should love your neighbour as yourself. And then he wanted to get, I think the expert in religion did want, as Morag said, to get another point back. So then he said, but who is my neighbour? So this story is the story that Jesus told in response to all of those things. What must I do to inherit eternal life? Answer, love God with everything you've got and love your neighbour. And then Jesus told the story about who the neighbour is. Are you with me so far? Yes. Oh, that's good. I'm so glad. So, next question. Where are we, Claire? Do you think? I think we're in the room. Next question for the room. What did this story take place?
Can I just say that if those online want to use the chat at this point, you may.
Oh, right, we've got an answer here. Good. It was on the road from Jerusalem to Jericho.
It was. It was on the road from Jerusalem to Jericho. And there was a person, a man, going along the road, and what happened to him? Online, would you put your hands up and tell me what happened to the man? Yes, please. We have an answer.
Oh, hang on. Are you right with the front of
Online. Sorry, Claire's been running, so yes. Please answer. Do go ahead and answer the question. What happened to the man?
Not sure. Did you call me?
Yes, please.
Sorry. He was mugged.
He was. He was mugged badly. He was mugged and he was left at the side of the road covered in blood. So that is not a very nice thing to happen to anybody. Now, why was the fact that he was covered in blood a problem for the room? Why was the fact that he was covered in blood a problem? Yes, Romilly, you had your hand up first.
No,
Thank you.
Sorry, the person behind Rom had their hand up.
Oh, all right then.
Because it made him ritually unclean.
Because it made him ritually unclean. In the religious laws of the time, you didn't want to touch a person who was bleeding at all. Not at all. So then, who came past first? Yes, Claire, could you please run to the front of the room?
Shouldn't have worn the heels.
Yes, and Daniel would like to say something.
So first of all, didn't he get robbed? And then I think there was another man that came past and he just looked at him and I think he just left him. And then I think the last man came past.
Hang on a minute, don't go too far. You're just making it difficult for the rest of them if you do that. So, So we had a man coming past, yeah?
We had a man coming past who left him at the side of the road. Why did the man not help him, do we think? Yes, Poppy's got the answer to that one.
Because he was a prophet, and prophets at that time, before they went in and out, they had to go in a special bath in their house, but if they saw a dead person or a person with blood on them, they had to go straight back in it.
Fantastic. That's what it means to be to touch someone ritually and clean. Poppy knows more about it than I do. Obviously, Rosalind's tutoring I wasn't there for that session. Okay, so we've got man, first passerby, has to leave him because to touch someone dead was going to mean that he'd have to have a complete ritual bath again. Second person comes by. Online, does anyone want to tell us about the second person who came by? None of them look as if they do. Okay, it's all right. I mean, we might actually need to get a move on at this point. So the second person came by and they were also going up for service in the temple and they left them at the side of the road. So along comes person number 3 with a donkey. Donkey's important. Who was person number 3?
I've got one closer to me here.
Right.
He was a Samaritan.
He was a Samaritan. And why did that matter? What was it about Samaritans? Romilly, thank you.
Thank you. I want to have the chance to speak at Assembly Moderator. It was important because he wasn't a Jew and wasn't subject to the same purity laws as the Jews had.
Correct. He wasn't a Jew. He wasn't going to think that he was going to be ritually unclean if he helped this person. Now, what do we think? Oh no, Rosalind doesn't think that's a very good answer. Okay, Rosalind.
Hang on a moment.
Rosalind, please answer us. You see...
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not why it was important. It was important because Jews and Samaritans hated each other.
I was coming on to that. But yes, now then, Jews and Samaritans really, really, really hated each other. But the poor man lying on the roadside was a Jew, and he was helped by the Samaritan, who picked him up, sat him on his donkey, took him to an inn, paid for him to be cared for, washed his wounds, everything. You know, it's more than calling 999, really, in the time. And Jesus then asked the expert in religion, so, Who was the neighbour? Now, hands up if you think it was the priest who was hurrying by on the other side. None of you. Hands up if you think it was the other person who passed by and didn't do anything to help. Hands up if you think the neighbour was the Samaritan member of the hated people. Yes, that is right. Thank you. So we've told the story together. And Jesus was making the point that sometimes our neighbour, who we are meant to love, might not be the person that you think it is. Your neighbour might not be the person from your friends. They might not be your friend. They might not be in your church. I mean, they might be. Let's hope they are. But your neighbour might be somebody different who you hadn't ever thought of as your neighbour. And yet Jesus says we need to love our neighbours, everybody around us, the people that we find most difficult to love as ourselves. Thank you for helping us tell this story together. We're going to pray. We're going to pray for URC children. We're going to pray like Hannah, because that's our prayer initiative. And in a minute, we're going to use some balloons. So if you have a balloon phobia, you might want to just move yourself to the side of the room. Let's pray together. Loving God, you teach us that loving our neighbour is often difficult and sometimes revolutionary. Our neighbour is the unexpected friend who helps us when we most need it. Our neighbours are all around us. And so we thank you that in this Jubilee year, we recognise our neighbours in all the children in our United Reformed Church family. Help us to love you and learn to love you more as we listen to each other, helping each other to serve you better day by day. And we pray like Hannah together in the words that are on the screen. Listening God, you hear us when we pour out our souls before you. Hear our prayer for all our children. Give us faith and power to increase you of our church, and your children and the people, where your children are present, welcomed and valued. Whereas they hear you through them, and to get our children close to you. Reduce our prayers in Jesus' name. Amen. We're going to do one last prayer activity. Now, there are some people in this room who are close to a balloon. Some people are close to more than one balloon. So if you're close to a balloon and you're okay to do that, would you pick them up, please? It's okay. There isn't a balloon for everybody because poor URC youth had enough trouble blowing all of these balloons up yesterday. And then members of General Assembly and everyone in the room has a little card like this, which has got some wishes for church and God's world. My one is from, I better not say, is from a young man who says that his wish for church and the world is for putting litter in the bin and sweeping. That's a fantastic wish for the world and the church. It doesn't matter if you are having trouble. You don't have to take them apart, because actually what we're going to do is all of those prayers and wishes which come from our children, we're going to send them with our balloons around the room. And we are going to say, God, receive all of these prayers. They're full of hot air, which is like your spirit. Let these prayers be answered in and through us. Amen. And those who are watching online, there's a picture of some balloons. I'm sorry that you don't have balloons, but would you pray for children and for all they have, and think of the joy which we're sharing as we bat our balloons around. The joy that Jesus has with us together, with our children in the church. And I think at this stage, we're going to sing. And you can carry on batting your balloons as we sing Jubilate, everybody. Please be seated. Whoa. I think it would be best if the children went out first. The children are going to a picnic. You've left the cake with me, that's fine. But I think the children are going to pick all of their things up. So if Assembly could just stay in your seats for a minute, so that we can let the children move out. Thank you so much for participating, and lots of apologies to the people online who couldn't throw balloons around.
So if we let the young people leave, and then Assembly, we gather again to start business at 2:30. So please be back in time, ready to start then.
And I'll be responsible for tidying up the balloons, okay?